In my college creative writing courses, there was an exercise we did to spark the act of writing. We were given a clocked period of time and given the instruction to begin, but with the constraint that we could only write if we started with the phrase, "I remember." To us, it was amazing what a simple framing could do to open up the creative process, changing it from something chaotic or too structured into the act of remembering. We were essentially writing scrapbooks and filling them with photographs of semi-fictional pasts, some detailed and beautiful, with sentences running on and on with the rambling sense of a fever dream. Others short and snappy, like a quick punch, or a glimpse of a foggy beach through tired child eyes. Whether these things were fictional or not, they had this extra layer of nostalgia on them, and that made reading them aloud to the class something personal. They were our photographs, and piecing them together into one scrapbook created a story, no matter how disjointed they were on their own. Basil, in the cutesy RPG Omori, keeps a photo album of his own, filled with memories he holds dear. Snapshots of childhood, from a time when he was artistic and looking to capture the emotions of those around him. He was, at one point, obsessed with non-staged photographs, only wishing to capture people in a natural state. Much like the flowers that he cares for, each one representative of a friend, Basil's photos were his way of seeing into the pure essence of someone, with the goal of sharing that with the person themselves. It was a pure act, one born from a desire to help his friends see their worth. Memories and their representations play a large part in the story of Omori, and to the titular character himself. The dream world that Omori habits is a scrapbook of the real world, mashed together with media from his childhood, creatures from his dreams, and, well, memories of his friends. Kel, Aubrey, Mari, Basil, and Hiro all exist in this dream world as they did in the past. The playground and secret hideout in the woods are smushed together into the central hub of the dream. Even Basil's photo album is captured in this space, filled with different photos, or photos changed ever so slightly from their real-world counterpart. There's a moment early on in the game when Kel and Aubrey fight and knock Basil's photo album to the ground, scattering the photos and making you, Omori, put it back together again. For the second time, you get to study each of these moments, placing them in their correct order, reading the text, and seeing the lives that Basil captured. But then, I remember getting a shot before kindergarten. I cried. Caitlin peeked through the open door and watched me. I remember sitting in the gymnasium before school. All the kids crowded in there, packed together. I remember searching for a chess piece in the tall grass of an old lady's yard. I was crawling, I think. Far too young to even know what age I was. The grass was tall and uncared for, and the lady kept egging me on. "Almost there," she'd say. "You almost got it." And there, in the grass in front of me, was the queen. My small hand scooped it up and carried it back to the old lady, sitting in front of her chessboard. The pieces were set up as if in the middle of a game, like some Havisham-esque being frozen in a moment of time. I remember giving her the piece, and without hesitation, she chucked it further into the high-fenced yard. Her laugh is there in my head somewhere. A cackle, more so. I feel like there's a part of me continually searching for that piece, only for it to be tossed so carelessly back into the yard. Dan Harmon, borrowing heavily from Jungian psychology, talked about the cycles present in our daily life way back when he did Channel 101. He was trying to teach the cycle of a story, and in doing so plotted out a cycle for the human mind. This movement from conscious to unconscious. He likened the mind to a house, with an upstairs and a basement. The basement being where all the not-so-great parts of us stay hidden, parts of us that we are ashamed of or wish to keep in check. The unconscious mind, full of impulses that we are not so cognizant of. I remember following Basil into the barn and through a broken mirror into a world not our own. A darker world made up of only a long hallway, a decaying family portrait, a noose, and sheet music. More snapshots of the real world, only these ones are not part of the colorful dream world that Omori lives in. These are hidden away, deeper, through doorways and broken glass. During a stretch of time in 2018, I saw a therapist who specialized in PTSD. She talked about how the self, the complete version of oneself, is made up of many smaller pieces, and that these pieces can often be talked to as if they were people inside of our heads. I'm remembering that episode of SpongeBob where SpongeBob's head is an office full of other SpongeBobs. What we would do during sessions is enter a very zen-like state by laying flat, closing my eyes, and feeling my body. Not in a physical way, but mentally. She would ask me to feel my hands, and then my arms, and then my torso, and to focus on anything that was out of the ordinary. A pressure, a pain, an image. Then, with eyes closed, I would focus on whatever it was that was out of the ordinary and try to visualize it. It felt like a form of meditation, where thoughts and ideas come at you and it's your job to just let that happen and flow over you. After finding and describing one such place, she would ask me questions to explore those various different parts of me, the inquisitive side, the protective side, and various others. And over time, it became easier to see them as different people inside of me. It became easier to navigate my emotions through this particular framing, to deal with negative emotions and to understand them. It makes sense then that Omori's constructed reality would use the snapshots of memories in much the same way. Mari, remembered as a loving sister, is always there to let you save the game. Hiro, the protector, is the healer of the party. Kel is hot-headed, so he's better at annoying enemies and dealing damage, while Aubrey can cheer everyone up and still beat ass with her baseball bat. Those parts of him have taken on the guise of his friends because that's how they appear to him. Even in his own mind, he relies on his friends for those things, even if it's his dream, and those are still just parts of him providing him with those feelings. Much like the real world, in the dream world, Basil is the nostalgia, the memory. Omori stores his own memories in Basil's scrapbook, just like Basil stores the group's memories in the real world. That's why the photographs are ever so slightly different between the two realities. That's why, after the initial incident, Basil disappears. In David Van's book, Aquarium, the main character doesn't remember much of her past. She's only a child, but she lives with her single mother in a small house and spends her time after school wandering the local aquarium, waiting for her mother to get off of work and pick her up. Her life is quiet and peaceful. Her mother is content, even beginning to date again. I remember the book as a gray day outside of the warehouse. Never quite raining, but always drizzling, even though I read the majority of the book on a sunny beach in Chicago. It's funny how that works sometimes, isn't it? One day in the story, an old man starts talking to the main character while at the aquarium. I didn't know anything about the book at this point. It was something I just snatched off the shelves of the bookstore because the cover was pretty. And there was something about the prose here that gave me a weird vibe. Something wasn't right. When the old man tells the girl that she can't tell her own mother about talking to him, well, my mind went to some dark places. I'm sure you can imagine. Luckily, though, that's not where the book goes. And it's revealed shortly after that the man is the main character's grandpa, the mom's father, who was not only absent for most of the mom's life, but who abandoned her while her own mother was dying. Through the mother's childhood, while she was supposed to be raised and cared for, she was left with the burden of caring for someone terminal, alone. This understandably traumatizes her, which, from my earlier depictions of the main character's life, might seem odd. Her mom is never portrayed as anything but a good mother, and despite their life not being perfect, the mother is high-functioning and raising her daughter without a hitch. She never talks about her own parents, but that alone isn't a sign of trauma. She loves her daughter. She goes to work, and they're doing just fine. But this is where the story gets dark. I remember just earlier in this essay, I spoke about the idea of the basement, and on the screen it read, "To the extent that we keep the basement door sealed, the entire home becomes unstable. For some, eventually, the basement door can come right off its hinges." That is exactly what happens to the mother in Aquarium as soon as her father jumps headfirst back into her life. I remember Andrew, the other Andrew, not the one with the old parents and the big house by the highway, but the skinny, small Andrew who rode dirt bikes and got me into Travis Pastrana. I was never able to spend the night at his house, which is odd. That was the thing to do back then. I remember the one time that I tried to spend the night, and we stayed up listening to MTV music videos and playing some motocross game. And we did that for hours until the sun went down and his father came home. I remember staying with my cousins, lying on the floor at night, and when my uncle came home, he and my aunt fought loudly in the next room. I think he was drunk. The next thing I know, my mom was coming to pick me up. Andrew's mom and my mom talked for like 30 minutes before my mom took me out of there in a rush. I remember on the drive home, she rolled her window down and lit a cigarette. Her face was cold, looking somewhere other than the road. Into the past, maybe. Her own photo album. "You can't stay there," she said. And somehow it all made sense. You spend the majority of Omori searching for Basil in the dream world. You search high, you search the creepy woods, and you search low. Eventually you have to go deeper to follow the trail. You have to go deeper to find where Basil's been taken. I remember in Life is Strange, when searching for the killer who's drugging women and taking their photographs against their will, you find his hideout. It's not in the junkyard. It's not somewhere hidden in the school. No. It's underground, deeper. Only beneath the earth can you find what has been hidden from Max. Only there can you enter the strange limbo space of Max's memories, where surreal versions of the killer stalk her through darkened halls, where all her photographs, like snapshots of time, are alive. The threads of Omori run deep into the past as well, back to Lisa, an RPG Maker game about a girl in an abusive home who tries to escape into her dreams, but even they are plagued by her abuser. His visage makes up every NPC and enemy in the game, and even further back to Yume Nikki, which was an inspiration for Lisa itself, a game where a hikikomori lives a life of solitude in their high-rise apartment, never leaving the room except in their dreams, where they find numerous doors, all leading to abstract landscapes, each with their own doors that connect to other worlds and go continually deeper, filling more and more with horrific imagery, grasping hands, car crashes, and hinting at some unresolved trauma. In these games, the basement is the place where dark representations of the mind present dangers to the player. Digging a little deeper in Jungian psychology, Jung calls these representations of the self the shadow, and says that it exists as repressed ideas, weaknesses, and shortcomings. Time and time again in Omori, we are confronted with the shadow in its many forms, representing Omori's fears, and even further, something that shows up as a single eye floating in blackness. During these moments, we are given the chance to confront the shadow and overcome it with special skills such as calming down and persevering. Through these confrontations, Omori is able to explore more of the headspace without the fears he begins the game with. Young himself said that one way to achieve well-being, healing, and personal freedom is to confront the shadow. Going deeper enough into the dream world, there is only one shadow left for Omori to confront: Basil. Aquarium is a very difficult read, not because of the vocabulary, but because of the bleak. The prose is always present because you're not in the mind of the person who is remembering. You're looking at that person as they struggle to make sense of this new reality with the basement door blown open. After the main character's grandfather returns into both her life and her mother's life, the mother makes it clear that she does not want this to happen. But the main character understandably wants to know her grandfather, and through the grandfather's own words, this seems like a very strong overreaction. This should be something that they can talk through and work through, even if it takes some time. But when the main character pushes back against her mother, the true nature of the trauma is revealed, because the mother forces it upon her own child. She takes on the role her own mother had in her life, becoming helpless and forcing her daughter to take care of her. And I do mean force. In their quaint home, the traumas of the mother's past are recreated as a form of punishment. Even as we, reading the book, and the main character plead for her to stop, plead that we understand how dire this is now, that we won't ever talk to our grandfather again. The mother continues the charade, falling deeper and deeper into this dark pit of despair, to a point where it doesn't even feel like she has control of it anymore. What started as some kind of punishment devolves into her being completely helpless. Aquarium is very difficult to read because it shows us a portrait of somebody facing their trauma head on and failing. It tells the story of facing one's own demons and coming out the other end a quantifiably worse person. But the whole time, you can't help but understand that the price of trauma is not something that can just be ignored. You understand that the things done to her in her childhood made her this person you see before you, and that the years of caring for her daughter beforehand were done in an act of repressing her horrible past, stuffing it in the basement until the hinges blew off. Omori shows us the opposite. In the waking world, Sunny, the creator of the dream world, the main character, the boy whose sister is dead, the boy who doesn't speak anymore, hasn't spoken a word in years, hasn't left his house in years. Sunny's friends have aged and grown apart around him in the wake of his sister's untimely death. Basil is not missing, but his photo album is void of all the pictures that have Mari in them. Aubrey, now with pink hair and a spiked baseball bat, says that Basil blacked out all those photographs himself. When Basil learns that you'll be moving away, he excuses himself to the bathroom. And just like when the old man starts talking to the girl in Aquarium, I got a strange feeling. When you go to check on him, you find out that Basil is not okay. Despite everyone being understandably messed up by Mari's death, it's obvious that Basil and Sunny are taking it the hardest. Who knows what kind of dream world Basil constructs when he sleeps? This makes Basil's disappearance in the dream world even more important, because not only does Basil represent memory, but he's also attached to this particular memory, the memory of Mari's death, in some greater fashion. Dream Basil specifically is a memory that Sunny's mind is trying to erase, pushing it deeper and deeper into headspace, all the way through the lowest part of the map, and then further into black space. I remember finishing Aquarium and feeling grateful that the sun was shining. In black space, there's another photo album. It's still Basil's, but this one is filled with different photos. And unlike the other dream photo album, these photos are not weird mirrors of reality. These ones are snapshots of a particular memory, the remnants of the day that Mari died. And like Aquarium, they reveal a dark truth that Sunny and Basil were living with. As you fill this photo album up, you see the accident that caused Mari's death. You see the creation of the something that's been following you, and you confront it. In the end of Yume Nikki, the Hikikomori climbs over the railing of her balcony and plummets to the ground. At the end of Lisa, no matter how hard she struggles, she can't escape the image of her abusive father. In the end of Life is Strange, the trauma of losing her friend is personified as a town-destroying storm, and Max must choose to let go. In the end of Aquarium, the mother lashes out in rage and becomes unstable, unable to care for herself any longer. The grandfather ends up caring for the main character as she grows into adolescence. And in the end of Omori, Sunny confronts Basil, who attempts to take his own life. The two struggle and fight, and both go to the hospital. While unconscious, Sunny has a sort of final showdown with Omori, his shadow, the part of him that is ultimately trying to protect him by stuffing down these traumatic memories. After reading Aquarium, it's clear to see why. Sometimes these memories can do further harm. But Sunny faces him. Sunny faces him with the courage that his friends gave him. And through persevering, is finally able to defeat Omori and have his duet with his sister that he never got to have. When he wakes up, he is able to cleanse himself and Basil of the something that followed them both. They're able to remember, and despite not knowing what their friends will think of them, they decide to come clean about what really happened that day. And at the end of this essay, I'm stuck remembering. I remember Omori. I remember white space and the knife.